Revealed. What this Korean Mafia boss discovered about the black nurse's hidden bruises. Jay Park lingered under the flickering streetlight, rain streaking down his face, a curtain between him and the chaotic world of Chicago. Once a man who commanded respect and fear, he now stood as a ghost of his former self, wrestling with demons that clawed at the corners of his mind. Today, rain slid down his skin, a baptism of sorts, washing away old sins while propelling him down unfamiliar paths. He was nearing a decisive juncture, the café he dreamed of opening, a space marked by community and healing, not one riddled with shadows and loss. But the past echoed in his thoughts, relentless in its pursuit. Tangled in their own wars, Jay recalled his grandfather's gentle smile, urging him toward light, yet each memory screamed caution. Could a man once feared for violence truly foster healing? The weight of his former life suffocated him. Heart racing, he navigated memories painted with blood and betrayal. What if he failed? The delinquent vision he fostered was a storm of emotions, a cyclone of regret clawing at his resolve. As he stepped into a fresh downpour, visibility waned. A flash of instinct urged him to turn back. Yet, just as the storm engulfed him, he caught a glimpse of her. Angela Brooks, her scrubs drenched, a barrier against the world's unyielding demands. An electricity sparked between them, a shared awareness of struggle and aspiration. She hurried past, burdened by her own relentless fight, 2 jobs, and unspoken fears. In that instant, he sensed the heavy veil she wore, cloaked in silent screams and hidden fights. Before he could chase down his thoughts, harsh laughter broke the atmosphere. An exchange between a wealthy patron and his friends, words floating like venom. Look at that nurse pretending to be a hero. Anger surged through Jay. It felt all too familiar. The contempt he used to wield a lifetime ago. For a heartbeat, his body tightened, memories of power surging within him. But power had left him broke, desolate. His fists clenched at his sides. Old habits stirred. He yearned to confront, but the man he wanted to be urged him to refrain. A moral dilemma loomed. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the cafe took shape, Jay's impulse to protect Angela only grew. He offered her refuge. Yet, he could sense fractures beneath her resilient exterior. Moments when dark clouds passed over her laughter, shadowing the real story beneath the smiles. Each interaction revealed layers of anguish intertwined with the stigma she battled in her profession. As a predominantly white healthcare arena swallowed her whole, silent and unyielding, pieces of her vulnerability cracked open, especially during shared coffee breaks on the cafe patio, where warmth mingled uneasily with shared stories. Then came that night, the moment when shadows peeled back to reveal lurking truths. In a flicker of streetlight, Angela's arm glimpsed in the dark. A bruise, hurriedly concealed, but unmistakably vivid against her dark skin. Jay's heart lurched. He felt the tension squeeze his stomach like a vice. Could she still be safe around him? Torn between anger to confront the unfairness of it all and the nagging questions of his own past, he felt chained between worlds. Did he dare expose himself to the violence that had marred his own identity? It was a treacherous abyss beneath him, a confrontation with choices he thought were locked away forever. As the weight of unending storms bore down on them both, Jay steeled himself against the approaching reckoning, with Angela's well-being resting precariously in the balance. The confrontation of past loyalties hummed just beneath the surface like an unseen current, waiting to pull him back into a world of shadows he thought he escaped. Would he rise against his instincts, or would the approach of old allies drag him back into darkness? The finality of his choices spun rapidly, leaving the chilling uncertainty looming heavily in the air. Jay took a deep breath, steel reinforcing his spine as he took a step towards the cafe, determination hardening his resolve. This was not just a business venture. It was a reclamation of his identity, an attempt to rewrite the narrative he had authored with fear and violence. The cafe stood as a defiant bastion of hope against the backdrop of his past sins, and every time he envisioned its inviting doors swinging open, he felt a flicker of courage. But as rain continued to pelt against the ground, Jay grappled with Angela's plight. Those bruises held stories he wasn't ready to confront, yet their existence haunted him, the imprint of pain echoing through his own historically scarred soul. He envisioned the cafe not just as a place for coffee, well-baked pastries, or lively conversation, but as a sanctuary, a refuge for those burdened by similar shadows. Jay's commitment to create safe spaces didn't eliminate the gnawing fear that he might fail Angela, jeopardizing both their futures. The days ahead slipped into a blur of construction and countless decisions. Amidst the noise of hammers and the scent of fresh paint, resolved faces of workers melded into his vision for a new life. Yet, his interaction with Angela became increasingly complex. Each shared moment, the laughter over Bruise, the glances filled with the unspoken weight of understanding, pulled him deeper into a vortex of commitment that terrified him. In moments of whispered honesty, Angela revealed snippets of her world. The toll of her job, the pressure to conform, and her dreams for justice rang through their conversations like liberty bells, awakening an urgent desire within him to fight for her. Jay found himself caught in the light of her strength, fueled by admiration, but with each revelation came the looming dread of inaction. Was it their shared history of adversity that drew them together? Or was there something greater he was destined to combat? One evening, under the dim cafe lights that reflected the warmth he longed to project, he caught Angela in a serious moment. She stood looking out the window, rain blurring the cityscape, a well of strength wrapped in vulnerability. "Why do you really want to open this cafe?" she asked, her tone unsettlingly serene. The question struck him like a swift blow. Did he want to prove something to himself, or heal a past that left indelible scars? "I want to give people a place to heal, to escape," he hesitated, then added, "to not feel alone." The words echoed between them, heavy with possibility, yet stark with his insecurities. Would they hold true once the cafe opened, or would he cave under the weight of unresolved fears and expectations? Angela turned to him, sadness flickering across her features. "Healing requires more than just a space, Jay. It demands confrontation." Her gaze pierced through him, setting free doubts he thought he had confined. He heard this truth resonate deep within, as if her words reached down to challenges he had spent years evading. It was the unmasking of threats bubbling to the surface, and it terrified him. With each passing day, the cafe neared completion, transforming into the collective vision they had slowly crafted, a space imbued with connection. Yet, his inner turmoil swelled like the ocean's tide, the storm brewing ever closer. He sensed the ghosts of his past stirring, the promise of darkness summoning him as old affiliations beckoned. He realized that confronting Angela's truth would mean confronting his own. In the midst of creating a sanctuary, he wondered whether he could truly embody the change he wished to see, or if the shadows from which he had escaped still possessed a hold over him. The time had come to face both their realities. As Jay stepped away from the cafe, the electric pulse of the city thrummed against him, echoing a challenge he couldn't ignore. With every heartbeat, the decision loomed: confront the anger rising within or let it silence his burgeoning purpose. Would he break free from his chains and rise as the man he aspired to be? Or would he submit to the darkness that beckoned him home? As days turned into weeks, the cafe took shape against the rhythmic clamor of construction. Jay found himself drawn deeper into the work, burying himself in design choices and meetings with suppliers. Each minor victory, finding the perfect blend of coffee, sourcing locally produced pastries, or experimenting with the ambiance, filled him with a fleeting sense of accomplishment. Yet, beneath this productivity lay an undercurrent of unresolved tension that perpetuated a deep sense of disquiet. Angela's presence became a beacon during this tumultuous time. Their conversations radiated possibilities, yet remained clouded by unvoiced truths. As he listened to her recount stories of patients she fought for in the hospital, Jay felt a mixture of admiration and trepidation. Her commitment to justice echoed his desire for change, prompting questions about his own motivations. Did he want to inspire people with genuine kindness, or was he merely crafting a facade to mask his darkest impulses? One afternoon, surrounded by half-finished furniture and the heady scent of varnish, Jay watched Angela as she meticulously arranged jars of organic ingredients on shelves. He seized the moment to ask, "Are you really okay?" The surprise in her eyes quickly faded, replaced by an impassive mask. "I'll be fine. I'm used to this," she said softly, returning her focus to the task at hand. Her response echoed through him with a haunting familiarity. It was the exact line he had relied on in moments of pain, refusing to confront the wounds that festered just below the surface. "It shouldn't be this way," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "You shouldn't have to endure so much alone." Her gaze met his, and for a heartbeat, time stood still. In that vulnerable silence, Jay glimpsed a kindred spirit wrestling with hidden burdens, and he felt the weight of his own demons rising to the surface. "I appreciate your concern," she replied carefully, the hardness in her tone suggesting she wouldn't invite any deeper discussion. Jay understood that Angela, like him, was reluctant to unravel her past. Yet this realization ignited something within him, a flicker of defiance against the years he had spent evading his own truth. That evening, as raindrops drummed against the windows of the café, Jay wrestled with this awakening. His desire to create a refuge was no longer solely about helping others heal. It was rooted in a desperate need to face his past. The echoes of his violent history had always lurked at the edges, threatening to entice him into old habits, old camaraderies. He resolved not to cower. Building the café was a chance to weave threads of redemption for not just Angela and others, but for himself. That determination ignited a profound sense of purpose. Yet, doubt lingered like a shadow, reminding him of the many times he had failed, both as a friend and a man. Just then, he remembered the club where he had spent his early years, the one whose allure whispered promises of brotherhood wrapped in vice. He had left that life behind, or so he thought. Confronting Angela's trauma may rip the fragile threads of hope binding him to his new vision, but the promise of succumbing to his old ways now felt unbearable. The next day was pivotal, as the final touches approached completion. With Angela's hint of perseverance nestled in his heart, he took a calculated risk. He would reach out to an old acquaintance, someone from his past who might shed light on his current instabilities. Whatever the outcome, he would do it with clarity and intention. The café would symbolize a confrontation of character, not a mere business endeavor. As Jay prepared to send the message, the air shimmered with anticipation and fear, an electric pulse of impending revelation. Would this choice illuminate the shadows lurking in both their pasts, or would it unravel the very fabric of the sanctuary they were creating? With each keystroke on his phone, Jay could feel the tension crescendo, setting the stage for inevitable confrontation. Facing his phone, Jay hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Memories of nights spent in the club flickered through his mind, like images pulled from a dusty frame. The roar of laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the echo of desperate decisions welcomed him back, inviting yet cautioning him against drawing closer. Each name he scrolled past was a whisper, tethered to a life he once cherished, but had vowed to escape. He could feel Angela's unwavering presence next to him, a reminder of a future he wanted to embrace. Yet his past loomed behind them, a silent specter ready to swoop in at the slightest misstep. Uncertainty knotted in his stomach, but resolve took root. He couldn't merely build a café. He was constructing a foundation for his own redemption. With a sharp inhalation, he selected a contact. Marcus, the childhood companion turned bully, the one who straddled a line between camaraderie and chaos. With a careful blend of nostalgia and apprehension, Jay typed out a message. "Hey Marcus, it's been a while. Can we talk?" Hitting send felt like launching a rock into still water, sending ripples of anxiety through him. He couldn't dismiss the unsettling thought that reconnecting with Marcus might endanger the sanctuary he was building with Angela. Yet, something deeper stirred. Perhaps a confrontation with this chapter of his past could fortify his commitment to the present. The café was nearing completion, yet every nail hammered and shelf placed reminded him that it wasn't just about decor. It was an intricate tapestry woven with the threads of his and Angela's experiences. He glanced at her, busy labeling jars with a concentration that radiated determination. Despite her reticence, the fire in her eyes conveyed an understanding that Jay felt unheard echoing in his own heart, the importance of confronting one's demons head-on. Time drifted, punctuated only by the sounds of footsteps on the floor above as contractors finalized their work. The phone buzzed, jolting him from his reverie. A response from Marcus flashed on the screen, simple and loaded. "Sure, when?" The weight of his decision settled heavily on his psyche, each heartbeat a rhythmic drum of apprehension. Would Marcus reveal the truths that had haunted Jay for far too long? Would old allegiances threaten his newfound purpose? Or could they forge a bridge to understanding buried wounds? Angela glanced up, curiosity flickering across her face. "Everything okay?" Jay's mouth twisted into a half-smile, a facade laden with uncertainty. "Just catching up with an old friend." Her expression hardened slightly, as if she sensed the complexity of his lies. "Just be careful, okay? Some old friends don't necessarily have our best interests in mind." Those words struck a chord. He nodded, the caution behind her voice a reflection of his own swirling doubts. Each step forward felt layered with decisions that could either secure his escape from darkness or plunge him deeper into it. The café, now a sanctuary in the making, hung in balance as if aware of the weight of Jay's next move. He inhaled slowly, as if summoning courage out of thin air. This was not merely a meeting. It was a crucible of transformation. As he crafted the message suggesting a meetup at the café, email notifications chimed in synchronicity, urging him to engage in various logistics. Still, the forthcoming confrontation with Marcus overshadowed every task. With a final tap on his screen, he scheduled the meeting, locking in a date. Something felt different now. This wasn't about rehashing glory days or reconciliation. This was about understanding the roots of his conflict, the violent currents he could still feel pulling at his past. Just then, Angela's voice broke through his thoughts, drawing him back. "Are you ready for this?" He met her gaze, resolve hardening within him. "I guess we're about to find out." As the rain beat against the cafe windows, a rush of inevitability surged through him. He was about to face the shadows that had cast doubt on his journey toward authenticity. Would this meeting mark the end of his nightmares, or would it unearth a darkness that threatened to consume not just him, but the sanctuary he was building with Angela? The moment was at hand. The time had indeed come to face the past. Jay arrived at the cafe early, the familiar scent of fresh paint and wood shavings mingling with the more profound aroma of awakening dreams. The gentle sound of the rain caressing the window panes punctuated the heavy silence, casting an ambiance both serene and electric. He paced in the empty space, a haunting echo of laughter from friends long gone reverberating around him. As he looked around, he imagined the laughter that would soon fill these walls. Angela was mere moments away, having left to grab coffee. He embraced the solitude, using it to solidify his resolve. Each shift of his thoughts returned to Marcus. He could almost predict what would happen. The rush of adrenaline mixed with trepidation played a familiar tune in his mind. Could he reconcile the fear that anchored him to his past? Or would he emerge unscathed and stronger, He thought about Angela's warnings, how old ties can coerce a person back into the darkness they fought so hard to escape. Could a moment spent with Marcus unravel the progress he had made? Each lesson learned now felt atop a fragile structure, barely holding its form. He had tasted the sweetness of purpose, of crafting something anew alongside Angela. Yet the key to this new oasis came with the sharp sting of his past. The cafe door swung open, and in walked Angela, her presence both grounding and empowering. She carried 2 cups, steam wafting, but paused in the doorway, arching an eyebrow at Jay. "You're deep in thought," she stated, her tone smooth yet laced with concern. "Just wondering what I'll say when he arrives," Jay replied, forcing a casual tone. Yet, he could feel muscles tensing within him, fear twisting into knots in his stomach. "Remember, it's not about pleasing him. It's about you." Her words cut through the fog, a reminder of the inner strength he was cultivating. "Right," he nodded, adrenaline spiking at the thought of confronting a moment that could potentially reshape his reality. The question pressed relentlessly at the back of his mind. Who was he now? And how had he evolved from the emotional wreckage of his youth? As the time for his meeting drew near, Jay found himself questioning everything. Why had he reached out to Marcus? Was there latent anger waiting to be unleashed? Or could this be a pathway for acceptance? He thought about the last time he had faced someone from the past, the painful remnants of those encounters still fresh on his spirit. Then, the bell above the cafe door jingled, cutting through his reverie, and in stepped Marcus. Jay felt the ground shift beneath him. Emotions surged. Fear, anger, and old-bred disdain clashed with the new sensitivity he had been honing. He studied the man before him. Older, perhaps a bit worn, but still radiating the same reckless charm that had so captivated Jay during their formative years. "Jay!" Marcus spoke, his voice booming with misplaced enthusiasm. It reeked of the very memories Jay had hoped to contextualize better. For a split second, Jay's resolve wavered, an urge to retreat nagging at him. "Marcus." Jay's voice was steady but guarded, grounding in its brevity. As they settled at a small table tucked against the window, both men fell momentarily quiet, the rain's patter creating a shared pause. Jay realized that this was not merely a meeting. This was a psychological battleground. He needed to expose the truths that had haunted him, to steer the conversation into his own direction. "Why did you want to meet?" Marcus asked, breaking the silence, and the question hung with an electric charge. This was his chance to confront everything. "I'm constructing something new in my life, and I need to put the past into perspective." A calculated honesty flowed from him, heart racing as he worded his thoughts carefully. Marcus leaned back, skepticism flickering across his face. "You mean to tell me you're doing better than us? Quite the little cafe dream you've got." An inclination to lash out surged within Jay, mere inches from breaking through the surface. But the determination to rise above the clash was burgeoning. It was potent, urging him to face Marcus not as a revenge seeker, but as someone divergent from the shadows of yesteryear. The weight of the moment sat heavily upon them, a crossroads laden with expectation and trepidation. Jay prepared to dive deeper, to reveal what was left unspoken from the boyhood they shared, emerging into the light of his newfound purpose. What truths lay waiting between them? Would this encounter forge unanticipated clarity, or plunge him back into a quagmire of confusion? As questions spiraled in his mind, Jay knew the battle had only just begun. Jay took a breath, feeling the humidity of the moment weigh heavily upon him. He shifted in his chair, forcing himself to hold Marcus's gaze, masking the apprehension that radiated just beneath his surface. This was his opportunity to rewrite the narrative, to reclaim the power that had so often slipped through his fingers when he was around Marcus. "Maybe I am," Jay replied, a fire igniting within him, challenging Marcus's skeptical demeanor. "But it's not just about the cafe. It's about me taking responsibility for my life." Marcus leaned forward, eyes narrowing as if testing the resolve that punctuated Jay's words. What does that even mean? Last I checked, we were on the same path. You cut ties and ran off into your little dream world. So, enlighten me. What changed? The challenge was enticing. Jay sensed Marcus's underlying need to provoke a reaction, while his own pulse quickened, matching the rhythm of the rain outside. What changed is that I finally stood up and broke free from that toxic cycle, he challenged, surprising himself with the fierceness of his tone. I got tired of hiding behind the past, behind you. A flicker of something, was it guilt or perhaps defensiveness, crossed Marcus's face before it morphed back into the mask of bravado. Hiding? You think you're better? In that moment, Jay felt the shadows of their shared history threaten to engulf him, whispering echoes of self-doubt and familiarity. Yet, he pressed on. I'm not better, but I am different. You were always the life of the party, pulling me into a world I barely understood. I spent too long trying to fit into a mold you created. The words hung in the air, cutting through the tension like a knife. Silence enveloped the café. The dark clouds beyond the window mirrored the tumult of emotions brewing within Jay. Was he revealing too much? Was this confrontation enough to tear the thick veil from years past? Yeah, well. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture unsettlingly reminiscent of their youth. We all have to deal with our demons. You just decided it was easier to cut out the people who cared. Jay felt a surge of anger flare momentarily before he quelled it, opting for a more strategic approach. Caring isn't just about showing up. It's about facing what's wrong. You taught me that, he stated, threading his emotions with directness. You say you care, but where were you when I needed you the most? For a moment, Jay saw the mask of indifference slip, revealing Marcus's confusion and perhaps regret. Look, Before he could finish, Jay seized the moment, activating his internal resolve to delve deeper. I get that our paths were different. You chose your own battles, and I chose mine. But the chains you wrapped around me, those were your choices too. The clock ticked between them as Jay grappled with the layers of denial and bitterness he had worked tirelessly to untangle. He had wanted to be free of Marcus, but here they were, confronting each other in the only way they knew how, through grit and grim familiarity. Yet he felt a spark of convergence. He was no longer merely reacting. He was actively participating in his own narrative. Maybe you're right, Marcus finally murmured, voice softer, almost vulnerable. Maybe I should have been there, but I'm still learning too. And I never had a great example. A stillness settled lightly over them, a delicate balance on a precipice both terrifying and exhilarating. We can learn from each other, Jay offered, the clarity of his newfound perspective pushing through. But we need to be honest about who we are now, not who we were. For the first time, he felt Marcus's walls falter. Fine, but honesty sounds a lot scarier than I remember, Marcus whispered, almost to himself, while Jay sensed the small shift, a transfer of power, an opening of possibility. How many more truths are buried between us? Jay questioned, leaning forward, hunger for authenticity sparking in his chest. He had entered the cafe thinking of confrontation. Now it felt like unearthing the very foundation of their shared history. Would the revelations bring them together, or illuminate a chasm too wide to cross? The uncertainty loomed like clouds above, and Jay couldn't shake the thought that perhaps this was just the beginning of their exploration into the darker crevices of their connection. What lay ahead? Resentment or reconciliation? What undeniable truths would shift their trajectories irreversibly? The cafe's ambiance hummed with the tension of confrontation and discovery as Jay pushed for answers, anticipating where the conversation would lead next. Jay leaned forward, emboldened by a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The silence that followed Marcus's hesitant acceptance felt charged, each moment stretching longer, as if the air itself was waiting for an unspoken truth to surface. His heart raced as he considered the weight of what lay ahead. They had both excavated painful memories, but this was deeper, more significant. "It's not just about us," Jay began, his voice steadier than he felt. "It's about all the times I let you dictate who I was supposed to be. I wanted to be your friend, your confidant. But somewhere along the line, I lost myself." Marcus crossed his arms, an instinctive barrier forming again, but Jay refused to let it deter him. "Think about it. Every time I tried to express my own thoughts, my own desires, you laughed. You shrugged them off like they were a joke, and I laughed too, to fit in. But that laughter chipped away at me. It's not funny anymore." Jay saw a flicker in Marcus's eyes, a hint of recognition, an acknowledgement of the truth that had remained buried under layers of bravado and avoidance. He seized the moment, pressing on with a newfound clarity. "I'm learning that valuing my voice isn't selfish. It's essential. What I want matters, and it matters now more than ever." As Marcus listened, uncertainty etched across his brow, Jay felt a familiar mix of vulnerability and strength. He remembered times when he had let himself be silenced, held hostage by insecurity and fear. Those days were behind him. He refused to go back. "Let's peel back more layers," Jay urged, emboldened. "We were always afraid to acknowledge our weaknesses. What about the times we watched each other make terrible decisions, knowing we could do better?" Marcus shifted uneasily. "You mean like that time I thought I could just waltz into that party drunk and reckless?" "Exactly," Jay said, his voice rising with excitement. "That was just a reflection of a bigger issue. We both pretended everything was fine while drowning in pressure and expectation, but those masks," he gestured, "they're shackles. They keep us from moving forward." The tension in Marcus's posture eased fractionally, as if Jay's words had created a small crack in his armor. "You really think we can change?" "Change is exactly what we need," Jay asserted. "But it starts here, right now. By being honest, by acknowledging the parts we've tried so hard to ignore. You and we've been running from vulnerability for too long. What was my fear all those years? Why did I refuse to show my true self?" Jay's mind buzzed with memories, moments of self-sabotage, the times he could have stood taller. "I wanted to be part of your world, but it came at a cost. I neglected my passions, my dreams in some dumb belief that embracing them would mean excluding you. It made me weak. It made me small." Marcus glanced away, the shame creeping in like an unwelcome guest. "I never wanted you to feel that way, but I wasn't ready to face my own fears. It was easier to drag you down than confront my own demons." The honesty of that admission felt like a gust of wind, slicing through the heavy air between them. Jay saw the potential for connection, a bond that could deepen into something more authentic than they had ever known, while still trapped in the cycles of their past. "What now?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet. Jay took a deep breath, feeling the moisture-laden air filled with the scent of rain and brewing coffee. "Now, we forge a new understanding. We have to rebuild, brick by brick." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "But we can't pretend anymore. No more facades. Who do you want to be? Who do I want to be? We need to let go of who we were for something better, something real." The seriousness of Jay's words hung between them, weighted yet full of potential. Marcus stared at him, the barriers cracking under the gravity of what lay ahead. Then came the edge of uncertainty, treacherous and plagued with doubt. What if we fail? Jay held Marcus's gaze, his heart pounding. What if we soar? It's time to find out. But we need to make a commitment. No more hiding. Revealing what we feel truly is our first step into something new. As Marcus considered Jay's proposition, the café faded out, leaving only the two of them, poised on the brink of transformation. Would they commit to this new journey? This opportunity to become something neither had dared to dream? Jay could feel the weight of destiny bearing down on them both. It was a moment of truth, The silence was almost deafening as they tested the waters of their connection. What new revelations awaited them? And could they embrace the scars that would inevitably surface as they delved deeper? The tension wrapped around them, thickening the air again as they prepared to traverse beyond their past. Jay inhaled deeply, savoring the aroma of roasted coffee beans that enveloped them like a warm embrace. In that moment, surrounded by both the familiar and the unknown, he felt an inclination to probe further, to invite Marcus into a more profound dialogue about their shared past and forthcoming selves. "I've always admired your confidence," Jay said, observing the subtle shifts in Marcus's expression. "Yet it's fascinating how, even within our friendship, it felt conditional. You—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "You thrived in your world, but I often stood in your shadow, afraid to step into the light my voice could create." Marcus's brows furrowed, uncertainty mingling with disbelief. "But you've always been capable, more than capable. I just didn't see it. Why didn't you ever speak up?" "It was easier," Jay replied, his voice catching slightly. "Easier to silence myself than to battle the doubts clouding the path to who I wanted to be. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that your vision of the world was better than my own, that the future I could create didn't need to include conflict over self-expression." As the words left him, a weight lifted off Jay's shoulders. In acknowledging his silence, he felt a part of his identity blooming within the confines of dissatisfaction. To reclaim that identity was his choice, and perhaps the moment of truth lay in confronting the ramifications of that choice. What if that dynamic changes? Marcus's tone was laced with both curiosity and apprehension. "If you're finding your voice now?" "That's what we need to explore together," Jay urged, the intensity growing as realization settled in. "I think breaking that mold together can be liberating. Still, it won't be without challenges. Our histories are tangled, and change is rarely smooth." "And there are risks," Marcus added, his eyes glancing away as if wrestling with his insecurities. "What if I'm stuck in my ways? What if I drag you down again?" "Then we'll address it," Jay countered, a surge of determination filling his being. "But sticking to comfortable patterns, those are just the rot of stagnation. If we commit to honesty in our growth, we become accountable to ourselves and to each other. The key is to confront our fears head-on, not just as individuals, but as a team." The notion of partnership stirred something within Marcus. Jay could sense a shift, a willingness to embrace the challenge of true connection forged in raw honesty instead of protective facades. Amid the stirrings of possibility, Jay found himself both exhilarated and terrified, unsure of where this newfound pursuit of vulnerability would lead. "Okay," Marcus finally said hesitantly. "Let's do this then, but openly and without judgment. I can't promise I'll be perfect." Jay nodded, feeling the air in the café shift slightly, as though sealing their pact. Perfection isn't the goal, it's progress that counts, embracing the uncomfortable and allowing growth, even when it feels messy. The weight of this commitment loomed over them, but the prospect of shared growth encouraged a flicker of hope in Jay's heart. He envisioned not only a change in their friendship, but in himself. The stronger, more vocal version of his identity, yearning to emerge from the shadows. "Let's meet tomorrow," Jay suggested. "Just us, no distractions. We'll push each other, uncover deeper truths." Just as he spoke, the idea took form, not just as a plan, but as a lifeline that could lead to untold discoveries. As Marcus agreed, a mutual determination fortified the air between them, rich with the scent of coffee, but now spiced with the energy of possibility. The next day loomed like a promise, a blank page waiting to be filled with the ink of their courage. Jay's heart thrummed in anticipation. What tales would they unveil? What truths, painful yet illuminating, would emerge from the depths of vulnerability they had begun to tap into? But what lay beyond their commitment to honesty? Would they both discover freedoms that left them breathless? Or would they uncover shadows that threatened to pull them back into old patterns? The journey ahead felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with the vast unknown sprawling below, and Jay felt the exhilarating lure of flight tugging at his core. As Jay left the café, the lingering warmth of their conversation nudged at him like the persistent edge of a dream, yearning for manifestation. With every step away from Marcus and back into his own world, Jay felt an unfamiliar resolve brewing within him. The contours of his life, which had been molded by silence and hesitation, seemed to be reshaping, flickering with the promise of louder declarations and self-affirmations. The following morning came with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Jay found himself running through scenarios in his head, the conversations he might have with Marcus echoing like shadows against the walls of his mind. Would he find the right words? Would Marcus? The stakes felt bittersweet. He'd never realized how liberating potential could feel. As they gathered in a secluded park, the daylight carving pathways of warmth through the trees, Jay's stomach tightened with the raw honesty he intended to unveil. The buzz of cicadas hovered in the air, a soundtrack underscoring his thoughts. "Thanks for coming," Marcus said, settling onto the bench, his expression a tapestry of cautious enthusiasm. "I've been thinking about what we discussed, and I'm nervous. I don't want to step on your toes." This was it, the moment where Jay had to break through the lingering fears of his own inadequacy. "Don't worry about me," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "This is about us confronting what's kept us from growing together. I want to know how you see me and your role in our friendship." There was a pause, a moment spilling over with the weight of introspection. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, the sunlight catching sweat beading on his forehead. Jay could sense the struggle beneath Marcus's surface calm, the flurry of insecurities, the echoes of the past. "Okay," Marcus finally said, looking directly into Jay's eyes. "Sometimes I feel I've monopolized our conversations and focused on my own struggles, but it's not that I didn't care about yours. I didn't know how to break through your silence." Jay's heart trembled at Marcus's admission. "What made that so difficult for you? I guess I worried you'd dismiss my concerns. You've always been the one with the potential, the ability to inspire. I thought my problems in comparison were trivial, and by voicing them, I might inadvertently overshadow what you were going through. That fear of prioritizing myself stunted me too." Breath caught in Jay's throat. Each confession drew them closer to a raw interconnection, a shared vulnerability that had been masked beneath years of misunderstanding. "What if we create space for both our voices?" Jay proposed, his mind mapping out possibilities, the collaborative honesty they could unfold together. "What if we take turns sharing? Each week we could dive into a challenge we face. I want us to be accountable, not only for our individual growth, but for how we inspire each other." The suggestion rippled between them, and a quickened pulse of excitement flashed in Marcus's eyes. "That could really work. If we do it right, it might help me learn how to value my voice, too." As they navigated their pact, the air around them grew charged with unspoken awareness. Jay felt adrenaline push against his skin, a visceral reminder of the change he intentionally pursued. This was a transformative endeavor, one that demanded a reshaping of their entire friendship. Deeper conversations unfolded about their dreams and insecurities, guiding them out of the suffocating shadows of the past. Each revelation was a brushstroke, painting a new perspective on both their identities. For Jay, a transformative unlocking began to happen. He tasted personal validation in the midst of shared vulnerabilities. When they finally stepped away from that park bench, the sun hovered high, pouring down clarity and warmth. Jay sensed a change taking root within him. The soil of his being was enriched with the nourishing flow of voice. Yet the challenge loomed. This was merely a beginning, not a resolution. What awaited them in those deeper layers of exploration? Could confronting fears would surface reciprocal insecurities, pulling them back to their old ways? As Jay walked home, determination brewed anew within him. But what awaited him after these shared confessions? Was the gilded path toward mutual growth riddled with hidden adversities yet to confront? Each step felt heavy with the knowledge that the real work was only just beginning. The cafe doors swung open, and the gentle chime of a bell echoed, announcing the arrival of new faces. The warm, inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, dancing around Jay like an embrace. This was the culmination of months of hard labor, a project that transcended bricks and mortar, evolving into a beacon of hope, resilience, and healing. Jay stood behind the counter, his heart racing with pride as he observed the soft chatter and laughter around him. This was the moment he had envisioned. The cafe bustled with life, conversations flowed, and joy permeated the atmosphere. No longer trapped in the shadows of his past, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The darkness that once clouded his identity had given way to light, igniting a renewed sense of purpose. Angela breezed past him, her presence illuminating the space. They had journeyed through their respective battles, and now they stood united, striving to uphold the sanctuary they had both committed to creating. Jay marveled at her strength. Each bruise she had hidden resonated with him, amplifying his desire to advocate for her, to champion not just her well-being, but that of others seeking solace from the burdens they bore. "Look at this place," Angela exclaimed, her voice full of awe as she surveyed the cafe. "You really did it, Jay." "I couldn't have without you," he replied, the weight of gratitude palpable in his tone. "You challenged me to confront my fears, and this is as much yours as it is mine. Together, we've made something powerful." Moments morphed into hours, and Jay felt the knot of anxiety within him steadily unfurl. Formerly, he had been shattered by self-doubt, worrying if he had the capacity to transform not just his surroundings but himself. But now, as he watched patrons find refuge beneath the cozy roof, he understood his metamorphosis wasn't merely about building a cafe. It was about reclaiming his identity, confronting his history, and inviting others to connect in transformative ways. Angela's laughter rippled through the crowd, a reminder that they had both wrestled with their trauma, yet emerged victorious. She approached him at the counter, a smirk playing on her lips. "So, what's next?" "A nationwide chain of cafes." Jay chuckled, but he knew his aspirations had grown beyond commercial ambitions. "I want to provide workshops, discussions, safe spaces where people can share their stories. I want this cafe to lead the way in fostering community healing." Angela nodded in agreement. "People need places to feel seen, heard, and celebrated," she said, her conviction visible. As patrons began to fill the cafe in droves, Jay allowed himself to reflect on the weight of their collective journeys. Every shared conversation and vulnerability unearthed had sculpted a foundation built on authenticity and strength. No longer was he fueled by fear. He was propelled by connection. The realization washed over him. He had conquered the shadows of his past, and from the ashes had risen a man of resilience, compassion, and purpose. That evening, after the last patrons had left and the cafe quieted, Jay and Angela lingered amid the gentle lighting. They shared stories of the day and plans for tomorrow, laughter mixing with the aroma of lingering coffee. "Thank you for being a part of this," Jay said, sincerity weaving through his words. "You opened my eyes to the fact that healing isn't just in the grand gestures, but in those quiet moments of connection. We aren't just facilitating change, we're living proof of it." Angela met his gaze, awe reflecting in her eyes. "You've become a beacon of hope, not just for others, but for yourself. You've shown that it's possible to rise from the ashes." As they stood there, framed by the heart of the cafe, an overwhelming sense of fulfillment surged through Jay. He had accomplished something tangible, a sanctuary where voices could unify, and where shadows of the past could coexist with the light of understanding. He had cultivated confidence, recognized his capability, and forged a path where before he had seen only darkness. It was more than a cafe. It was an embodiment of his growth, a testament to the power of vulnerability and collective healing. This was his moment. Jay felt it solidify within him. The man he had aspired to be had emerged from the depths of his history, embracing each scar as a part of his story that ultimately drove him forward. He glanced at Angela, who was smiling in the warm glow of the cafe lights, and knew unequivocally that they were just getting started. They would face whatever came next together, side by side, armed with resilience and an unwavering commitment to transform pain into purpose. The next chapter awaited, but Jay possessed something much greater than a dream. He now held a narrative, a beautiful exploration of redemption alive before him. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support your favorite content. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Let your voice be heard. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of this.